While there will be more participants joining in, so let's begin our session. On behalf of Echo India, I welcome you all to today's session. To help minimize the spread of coronavirus, many of us have modified the way we are interacting with other people. It includes from shifting in person communication to online models, video calls, phone calls, text, emails, and using digital platform. While this new normal is something that we continue to adapt, and it comes in highly emotional time with confusion, frustration, and also a loss of in-person connection that we used to have. So, Eco India, along with our partner SBI Foundation, is organizing COVID 19 educational series, bringing in various experts from across the country to talk on other topics related to COVID themes. Today's talk is on changing communication needs during COVID 19. I would like to invite Dr. Sandeep Bhalla, Associate Vice President at Eco India, to take the session forward. Over to you, Dr. Bhalla.
Thank you, Deepa. First of all, very good evening to all my healthcare professionals, colleagues, those who are joined from different parts of our country or even some other countries also. Today, there is no doubt that we are facing an unprecedented challenging time. It's been almost 1.5 years and we are still not out of it. We don't know how the things are going to move, but we should always move in a positive mode. Healthcare professionals being the frontline warriors are all the more stressed out and they are the one facing the brunt of the situation and are at greater risk. The role of communication in times of COVID-19 pandemic is crucial. And empathizing, accurate and well-developed health communication can facilitate people to handle uncertainty and the fear during the crisis. Today, we all know that the Google universities and the WhatsApp university, which has come up in a big way, it has created a world of infodemic, and which is a very, very dangerous word because all sort of informations are floating in that particular universities. The changing dynamics of communication during COVID-19 and the role of traditional new age and the social media to bring out effective communication are very, very important. We should keep the people in the center while communicating and give priority to emotions rather than information. Communication is not what to say, but communication is how to say. Everything in pandemic revolves around effective communication, both internal with the colleagues, co-workers, team members, external with the people, communities, and nations. In this challenging times, communication plays a bigger role for the needs of the patient and even the society. One really needs to be very innovative and proactive in finding newer ways to establish communication. Communication with the patients and the families requires a lot of patience and understanding of human behavior. The communication with the team and the staff will play a very big role in keeping their morale high and giving their best. As you all know, majority of us are working from home. Working from home, shifting from the office, it is a very, very difficult scenario altogether. So how to communicate during the working pattern also during at the home scenario with the colleagues and keeping the pace of the work to move, that is another art. And in that, communication is one of the biggest pillar to help us to do that. It is the responsibility of the team leaders, supervisors, head of the departments of keeping high spirit and boost the team during this crisis moment. As India battles this huge crisis, we at Eco India, that is Extension for Community Health Outcomes, the organization which started its journey in 2003 with our founder, Professor Dr. Sanjeev Arora, with the mode that how hub and spoke model, that technology can play a greater role in increasing the capacity of primary care physicians for one disease. At that moment, he started for hepatitis C, and now it has spread to more than 140 countries. In India, 2008, the trust has been constituted, and Dr. Karnal Kumud Rai is the chairman, and the executive director is Dr. Sunil Anand, and we are around 150 colleagues based out of Okla in Delhi, in Okla. And this particular series, the purpose is that how we can disseminate the knowledge and in this crisis moment to all of our healthcare professionals. The today's topic webinar in this COVID-19 educational series, which is being supported by SBI Foundation, the topic is changing communication needs during COVID-19. We have purposely chosen this topic because COVID-19 pandemic has given us a lot of lessons. In this, communication is playing a key role, and we have none other than but very eminent speaker, Dr. Indu Vaneja, Madam. And I got the opportunity to work with Madam leadership since last 5 years. And we worked in different areas together. She's the founder director of Indian Institute of Healthcare Communication, a pioneer in the field of health communication in India. She's also an external assessor of NCOAS and Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, core group member of advisory board on health and mental health for National Human Rights Commission, visiting faculty for healthcare management programs to prestigious organizations like IIM Ahmedabad, Maulana Azad Medical College, Delhi University, IGNOU, IP University, PHFI, and even I think XLRI also, Madam was there. Runs multiple YouTube on ongoing programs under the titles Heart to Heart Talk, along with her, and Masterstroke with Dr. Indu Oneja. A regular invitee in national and international conferences, conducted around 1,500 clinical communication programs for doctors, nurses, and other healthcare professionals, in majority of the hospital, medical colleges all across country. I think none best than him, none best than her who can give us the update on this particular strategy of communication, because she herself is a leader in the communication in India. Over to you, madam, and kindly enlighten us about this pillar, which is one of the major pillar for all of us in today's scenario. Over to you, ma'am. Take it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Bhalla, for such an elaborate introduction. I think communication is the thing which is missing and is required the most probably in these critical hours. And I'm suddenly reminded of the study that was done by Harvard some time ago. And it says that 85% of our personal and professional, success comes from our communication and interpersonal skills. And especially in COVID time, I think that is one thing that has suffered the most, because we are doing what we want to do or what we like to do or what we have to do, but then we at times fail to communicate. So I read this quote somewhere that it was by one of the anonymous patients who said that they did everything for me, but nobody communicated with me. So probably that really hit me hard. That means we have just not realized. I understand the challenges. I cannot deny it. I'm not underestimating the disaster that we all are facing. But I think we can't make a dish without complete ingredients, especially the major ones. So communication is one of the major ingredients, but it usually is missed because at times we are so occupied with other things that it takes a backseat and we don't realize where we are missing. So all this while, I have been receiving a lot of calls from patients and their relatives, especially from the relatives that, okay, I've been asked to arrange plasma. And the other doctor is saying, no, we wait, let us wait. We need to see if we really need it. Or this particular medicine is not available in market. There's nobody who can tell me from where do I get, or do we really need it? Is it life-saving? So that means that communication that the family or the patient expected from the healthcare professional is somewhere missing. So my session is not at all to find fault with us, because I'm part of the system. So I can't blame anybody for the failure. My purpose is here just to bring it to everybody's, consciousness to mind, that if I could add this, I think I would do a better service. And I do not, in no way I underestimate the efforts being made by healthcare professionals, the work they are doing. It's tremendous, in terms of the quantum and the quality and the emotionality about it. So you have already set the tone by saying that, yes, we are facing an unprecedented, challenging time. I don't think any one of us was ever prepared for it, or we ever thought about it. But if we look back, I think we have all risen to the occasion, and we all have picked up our, abilities, capabilities, resources, and, done our share of duties. I think last year we did more than 35 awareness programs across the country, just to bring in more, awareness among healthcare professionals and general people. And unfortunately, we are still not out of it. We are already seeing second wave, and we don't know about the third or the fourth or fifth wave. God knows what is, in future for us. So that means somewhere I have to really, understand now what is needed, how I really need to go about. So besides general communication that we need to make with people to help them see how the things are and how they're going to take, I'm primarily going to focus on the communication that we make with the patients and their family members, because I believe this program, we are majorly focusing for the healthcare professionals so that they understand why it is important and what changes when you communicate or when you don't communicate. Incidentally, a relative of mine was in one of the ICUs of the hospital. And we all know that when you are in a hospital or when you're in ICU, there's all possibility of altered consciousness, and there is a hospital psychosis and all those things. The kind of narrations he shared with me, they were actually unbelievable. It could be even based on his assumptions. It could be even based on actually irrelevant, observations. But then he comprehended it in his own manner. So that means there's a risk of misperception, miscommunication, which we need to really, understand, and we need to, address it. So this time has actually brought in a lot of change in the way how people are looking at the situation. People are panicking, people are anxious. There is increased irritability. There is mental and physical exhaustion among healthcare professionals, of course, in general public also, but then healthcare professionals are the frontline warriors. So definitely there's no, doubt about it. The kind of stress they are experiencing, I'm getting a lot of calls from hospitals where they are asking to address hospital staff's anxiety and depression and stress related, concerns. That's because it's been almost 1.5 years. Anybody would be exhausted by this time. At the same time, when we look at it from the patient's point of view, I think things like social distancing, mask, PPE, precautions that we need to take, the distance we need to maintain from the patient, this has further complicated. As it is, if I look back, I think communication hasn't been in a very high spirit in general also, but these barriers have further complicated the communication and actually decreased the quantum of communication. So the patient and the family is at loss. So when I talk about the communication with the patient, see, we all communicate in multiple ways. We use verbal communication where we use words and we talk to the patient, but we communicate a lot non-verbally, where our body language, our smile, or our tone of voice, or our eye contact communicate a lot. And incidentally, this COVID has even marred that communication. So if I talk about the body language or the tone of voice or the expression or facial expression or smile, eye contact, I think it's completely, gone. So if I divide the whole communication into 3 parts, the language part, then the tone of voice and the paralanguage and the body language. So all 33%. So body language is gone because we are completely covered with PPE, mask, and then shield, and you're hardly visible to your patient. And then the tone of voice changes because we usually have to speak louder. So that becomes more like little authoritative and, irritable kind of a communication that we are making. So the only communication that we are left with is the verbal communication, the language part, and then some of it, for example, eye contact, if you can make, and you can, interact. So we have to really focus on how do you really go about making this part of communication effective. So kindly allow me to share my presentation with you so that I can, you can all see what is what we are going to discuss that we have. Give me a second, please. So Deepa ji, if you could make me the co-host or allow me to share my screen.
You have the sharing rights, ma'am. So you can share
right. Thank you. Give me a second. Yeah, give me a second. Yeah. Okay, so is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So as I said that the whole communication can be, divided into 3 parts, and it is the language, the paralanguage, and the body language. And considering that we are mostly covered with mask and PPE and face shields, so the major chunk of our communication, that is body language, is missing. So we have to depend on the language and the paralanguage part majorly. So in this, we have to make sure that we are able to, handle these challenges, these barriers in the communication. So keep in mind that when the patient cannot see, your face, first of all, your identity is not clear to the patient. Are you a doctor or a nurse or a paramedic staff or an attendant? So somewhere I think that clarity has to be brought in. So either I need to have a proper, name tag on my this thing, or maybe when I talk, I need to tell that I'm a doctor or I'm a nurse or whatever my position is, so that they know whom they are communicating with. And we got to understand they are equally confused, scared, anxious, feeling hopeless and helpless. They are depressed because the word corona, probably if I think of corona last time, like I have had this, problem last year, but most of us recovered out of it. But this time, the kind of news we are getting to hear from the WhatsApp University and from the other media, I mean, the moment you hear corona means you have this feeling that I do not know if I will really make it or I will not make it. So it's leading to a lot of anxiety and hopelessness and helplessness and also depression among patients. So in this time, if I ask you to build rapport with your patient, it might seem to be slightly, challenging or maybe theoretical to you, but honestly, it is not. Trust me, I mean, even if you go and ask just one sentence, how are you feeling? Or if you just lock your eyes with the patient and look at the patient and, ask, do you want to ask something? Even that gives this confidence to the patient that you are connected with the patient. So building rapport at this moment is very essential because they are at loss. Their family members are not around them. They're more or less, set in isolation. They cannot connect with their family members. They cannot connect with anybody else. So whoever is interacting or doing whatever with the patient, if possible, at least speak a sentence or two with the patient so that they feel that, yes, you are interacting with them and you are doing for them, with them. Then, of course, as I said, at this moment, probably eye contact is the best way to communicate that, yes, I'm listening to you, or I am talking to you, or I am addressing you. And also, like, I think I speak a lot about your heart and your mind. Please pardon me if I'm sounding little theoretical, but honestly, if you trust me, if you look at the patient for a little more than 2 to 3 seconds, they get to see that you are trying to connect with them. And I think this could be a real good connection we could make with the patient. So as I said, even if you ask simple sentences like, how are you feeling? Are you feeling better? Is there anything that you want to say? Or is there anything that you want to ask? That goes a long way in communicating that we are doing everything for them, with them. So if it is appropriate, for example, if the patient is not very serious, patient is conscious, patient is recovering, if appropriate, please smile. I think smiling will relax us as well as it will relax the patient and make the patient feel, connected and comfortable with you. So when you speak to them, make sure that you don't sound authoritative. I know mask makes us raise our voice. Because of mask, we have a tendency to shout slightly, but at the same time, we have to make sure that we don't sound, authoritative or intimidating. So we have to be soft, but at the same time, we should be audible because sometimes because of the mask or because of the face shield, our communication does not reach the patient. So the volume has to be audible to the patient. Again, the tone of voice, as Dr. Bhalla very rightly said, communication is not what you say, communication is how you say. So if your tone of voice is little authoritative or intimidating or rude, they feel that we are being, uncourteous or being rude to them. So we have to make sure that our tone of voice does not sound authoritative or intimidating to them. At the same time, especially if the patient is, for example, on, most of the patient would be like on with oxygen mask or BiPAP. So we know that they will not be able to speak or they will not be able to talk. So we have to actually be innovative in providing them some ways to, connect with us. So maybe a bell to call, or maybe some way to call, or in case if they need some help or they need something so they can call us. Even providing a paper or a pen so that they can write and communicate with us. Even, and that's another way to, provide them a way to communicate. Having a couple of cards with, regular words, like, for example, if the patient wants to say something or ask something, and if we could have a picture or a word on that. I mean, if those set of cards could be given to the patient, that in case if they have something to say, in case they're not able to speak because of the BiPAP or because of the mask, they can show that card and communicate with us. And then also we could have a set of cards to show them, to confirm what we are understanding from the communication that they are making. So somebody, on internet had put a set of 32 cards, which had most of the things that the patient may want to talk or ask or communicate. And they could be provided to the patient, or they could be provided to they could be provided to the healthcare team also. So when a verbal communication is not working, I think this kind of communication would improvise communication. So the idea is that they should not feel that I have been left unattended and neglected. Not that we are leaving them unattended and neglected, but this is the communication or the assumption they make, because we are not directly communicating with them. We may be communicating about the patient between our team members, but the patient is mostly a mute spectator to it. So how much ever unwell they are, let us remember that they are conscious, they are observing, they are listening, they are also understanding. So they shouldn't feel that they are not part of the team that we are attending. So that was a little bit about the communication with the patient. I'm not talking like, sit and talk to them, address their concerns, counsel them. If possible, please go ahead. That will really be of a great help. But I don't want to give you any unrealistic goals. But wherever you can communicate, please make sure that you interact with your patient. At the same time, I think interacting with the patient's family is very important. They are at a major loss. When the patient is inside and the family is outside, they really have no clue what is patient's status. They're really worried. And as I said, the word corona, some people have paralleled it with criticality of the condition or death. So there, I think regular updating plays a very big role in helping the family kind of understand that what is the status of the patient. So here we need to really understand the patient's communication need. Let us all remember, when the patient is critical or has any serious diagnosis, like for example, COVID-19, the greatest fear is fear of death. So you can well imagine who is under this fear, how would that person think or behave or react. So I remember my daughter's friend whose mother was admitted in a hospital. So probably he was asked to bring remdesivir when it was recommended as a treatment protocol. So he went to the chemist and he asked, is it available? Then with a lot of haggling, he could get probably 2 or 3 injections. He literally bowed down to his knees, requesting him to provide him 5. Probably that was the number that he was asked. That's because he thought probably this will save his mother. At times they become aggressive with us. They argue with us. They blame us for the neglect. They are unhappy with the whole thing. And whatever is happening with them, they have a tendency to blame the healthcare professionals. That's all coming from the fear of death. It actually completely changes the way a person behaves. Even a normal, sensible person would go completely haywire when they are under this kind of a threat. So I think regular updating the family is very important. Again, you might say that we don't have time, we are already overworked. I fully empathize, I fully understand. But if I could speak to the patient's family maybe once a day or maybe for 5 minutes and just tell them what is the status, what is the change, the patient is in the same stage or improving or deteriorating, whatever it is, the family gets to know what is my patient's condition. And if you could answer some of their questions, clarify their doubts, I know it requires patience. I know I'm asking you to be, I'm asking you more, but I wish we could do this. It would really give more meaning to the service that we're providing to our patients. There will be chances when they will be very anxious and they might get aggressive, or they may start crying, or they may they may behave very weird. Please address their anxiety and fear without giving any false hope. So it's very important to tell them what is the status. So one virtue I think which would be of great help is empathy. At this moment, I think this is a real virtue which all of us must be experiencing, because I think most of us have seen either we individually getting sick or having a family member who has suffered COVID-19, or unfortunately have lost a family member or a friend or a relative, I think you would be able to now see things from the patient's point of view, from the family's point of view. So if you will be able to see it from their point of view, see, we being healthcare professionals, still we are better off than non-professionals, because we still have access to know what is happening with the patient or what is the condition. I remember in our groups, we repeatedly received message, anybody in this hospital, anybody's in this hospital, I want to know about this patient. Somebody would volunteer, yes, I am in this hospital, let me, how can I help you? Oh, I have a patient in this hospital, so can you tell me what is the condition? So we are able to still access, more information, more details about the patient. But unfortunately, patients, attendants who are outside and who do not have anybody in the hospital, the treating doctor or the or the team members are the one who are, the only source of information. And it's all the more important. Otherwise, somebody might give misleading or a wrong information, which can create. So I think empathy plays a big role when you can see their situation from their point of view. If you could speak to them for a minute or two and tell them what is the status, I think they'll really, really be always grateful to you, thankful to you for the. More than communication, I think it is the willingness to engage in conversation that is important. I mean, if you can demonstrate that I'm wanting to talk to you, I'm ready to talk to you, they're really, really grateful and thankful to you. So when you are, give me a second, I'm not able to see the heading. Okay. So while interacting with the patient or their family member, some of the things that I would request you to, take care of is, one of us, please keep the message very simple. Keep the language very, very simple, no technical jargon. Just explain whatever in the simplest possible manner you can explain. Any kind of technical jargon that there's opacity or there's a hyperventilation or there's a, this thing or that thing, that would, they may not understand it very, very clearly. Even the speed of our talking has to be, something that the patient or the family can understand. And at the same time, we need to understand the language they speak. Sometimes we have patients from a different language background. So we need to make sure that we speak the same language and they understand what we are saying. So using audiovisual aid in that situation will compensate for the language barrier. For example, if you want to tell them about the patient's condition, and if you can show patients X-rays or CT scan report, they'll understand it better, that what exactly you are trying to communicate to them. So divide your information in smaller chunks when you are explaining to them, so that they can understand or assimilate, because it's very technical, and especially when they are very confused or they are not in that state of mind where they can absorb what you're saying. So you really need to break down the information in smaller pieces and explain to them, and check whether they have really understood. The best way is to ask them, have you really understood? So I'm showing you a small paragraph. If you could read, it will give you an idea how it goes down with the patient's family. So if you read this paragraph, and if I remove it, I'm sure most of you would not comprehend anything. Studies suggest 50% of the patients and their families are not able to understand anything in terms of the diagnosis, prognosis, or treatment when we explain them, because we use technical jargon. The speed of our talking is very quick, and the tone of voice is sometimes very authoritative, so they are not able to clarify or ask questions. So they don't feel comfortable. They just keep nodding, indicating that, yes, I am understanding. But if you actually ask them, they are not able to understand anything. So if we really want them to, understand, we have to make sure that we speak in a simple, understandable language, and explain it in a very, very simple way, and also allow them to ask questions, because they'll have set of doubts that they want to clarify. The whole process will not take you more than 3 to 5 minutes. But if you could do that, that will be a great, great help. So sometimes we also have to deliver a serious news. For example, if the patient's condition is deteriorating, or unfortunately, if the patient has died, or probably the chances of recovery are nil. So all these are very serious news, and being doctor on duty or the healthcare professionals on duty, maybe you'll have to deliver this news to your patient. So there are a couple of tips that can help you in making sure that you are able to do this in a more, professional manner. So when you are announcing anything like this, you need to be sensitive, because again, it's going to come like a blow to the patient's family. So you need to be sensitive, but at the same time, we need to be straightforward. So any beating around the bush to minimize the severity or to soften the blow is actually going to create vagueness and confusion. So we have to be straightforward in case if we know the chances of recovery are very less, or maybe if the patient has died, or the condition is very, very critical. So we need to tell them, but again, we need to remember that it's going to come as a blow to the family. So we need to be, sensitive while giving this information. So again, I'm saying when you're explaining them about the condition or the, deterioration or even death, please use simple language, avoid technical jargons, avoid single steady monologue. So usually we have a tendency to say what we want to say. So we need to really pause in between, so that if they have something to ask or say, that gives them the chance to speak. So it's only if you will pause that they will be able to say something or ask or clarify with you. So as I said earlier also, even when you're talking about death or seriousness or criticality of the condition, so for example, maybe your setup is a primary healthcare center and you need to move the patient to the tertiary care hospital, or to a hospital where we have ICU, or where we have COVID bed. So we need to communicate with the patient's family and help them see that now we need to move the patient to another hospital, or maybe ICU. So they need to understand what you said. So in between, you really need to check for understanding, allow them to ask questions. So being silent sometimes or plays a big role, first of all, to communicate that I understand the seriousness of the situation and I'm with you in this. And also giving them a chance and opportunity to ask or clarify something. Your body language will play a very big role. For example, if you're sitting in authoritative posture, that shows that I'm not affected, or I don't care, or that's my duty, so I'm doing. So like, for example, in this picture, if you can see, she's leaning forward slightly, making eye contact, looking at the patient's family member. So that's how you communicate that I am with you in this situation. The usual response of the patient and the family is that they either start crying, or they become quiet, or they become angry, they will start shouting. They may even blame us for what has happened. So the psychological response is called DABDA. That's an acronym, DABDA. So in DABDA, D stands for denial. So the immediate response is denial or shock, that they can't believe it. How can this happen? This cannot happen. Are you sure? That's going to be the question to you. Then the A stands for anger. So they are unhappy about what has happened to them. So they may become aggressive, they may blame you, they may even become revengeful. So very often the kind of, narration we hear from the family that they were not concerned, they were not sensitive, is because they usually have a blaming attitude towards healthcare professionals, and communication gap further complicates. In 71% of the cases where the patients or the families have sued the doctors or the hospitals for negligence, the problem is not negligence, it is communication failure. So here we have to, if we have been able to, keep the family in the loop, if they know the conditions are deteriorating, they will not be angry with you. They will not be unhappy. They will not blame you for what has happened. Of course, unhappiness as an outcome, yes, anybody would be unhappy if they're going to lose a family member, but then they will not blame you for what has happened. Then they may even start bargaining with you. Bargaining in the sense, they'll say, tell me what can I arrange? Let me know what medicine I can get. Can we move the patient to another hospital? Can we ask another doctor to come and see? So what they are trying to do, they're bargaining to change the outcome. And then slowly when they start realizing the reality, they suddenly become quiet and start feeling low because the reality is sinking in. And finally, they get into that mode of acceptance. So when they are in this phase, I would suggest do not leave them in between. The whole process will not take more than 5 to 10 minutes. Let the patient's family come down to the level of acceptance. Then we leave them in between. For example, you have announced death and they are angry and you have left them. Or when even they are bargaining, you just say, whatever best could be done is being done or has been done. And then you leave. then their anger would aggravate and they may become revengeful, or they may start, speaking ill about us or defaming us. So how do we handle these responses? Denial has to be dealt with information. So when they're in denial, we really need to, show them some evidence, help them see the reality. For example, if we show them the patient's CT report, CAT scan report, they'll understand, oh yes, that's the severity of the condition. So when they are angry, please do not retaliate by being angry. Stay calm, listen to them, be supportive, but do not fuel anger, because if you will get into argument or answering back or clarifying, that's going to fuel anger and that can lead into aggressive reaction. So stay calm, of course, ensure your safety, maintain that physical distance, listen to them and support as much as you can. So when they're in the bargaining state, I think empathy is one thing that will really come to our rescue, because anybody who's going to lose a family member or has lost a family member is going to be in that denial phase and would be bargaining. So help them see the reality by showing them the evidences. Whatever best could be done has been done in the patient's care. When you see them depressed, it's time to show them direction. Now, what needs to be done? For example, if the patient needs to be shifted to another hospital, then we need to say that, please, I've updated you about the information. I think it's time that we take the next step and we need to move forward. Or for example, if the patient has passed away or the death is evident, then maybe if you tell them that I think it's time that you inform your other family members and let them know about your patient's condition. So giving them direction, because they're confused and they are lost. And then when it comes, then when you see them accepting the reality, that's the time to encourage them and help them take the next step and move forward. I know as a clinician, when you're facing the situation, it's very, very sad and very disheartening, because when you lose your patients and you see them dying, it's not easy to accept it easily. And I see a lot of posts on social media and on healthcare platforms where people who have personally seen deaths and serious patients, what they have seen, what they have gone through, they've shared their experience. It's something unprecedented. It's not something very easy to discuss. But at the same time, I would recommend that please stay updated about the condition and also the treatment protocol. And when you're giving expectations or hopes to the patient's family, be very, very realistic, especially when it is a private setup, when they are paying you for these services, they have sometimes unrealistic expectations. So that needs to be addressed time and again. And also, please do not give any, unrealistic expectation, because then you are likely to get entrapped in that. So as I say, I'm repeatedly saying, appreciate the importance of updating. I think that's the best way to prepare the family for eventuality. If they know what is the condition, if they can see what is the condition. In number of hospitals I have seen, they have actually created a glass wall so that the family can see the patient, from the glass panel. So they get to see the condition, they get to see the patient is in critical condition, the chances of recovery are poor. So slowly, by observing, by watching all that, they get to, believe or accept. So I think updating is the way to avoid aggressive reaction. And then keeping them in the loop about whatever changes are happening. At the same time, I think we have to accept the professional limitations. I know still we do not have a very short protocol for treatment. We got to accept the reality. I think that's not just with us or in our country, it's across the world. Everybody is struggling to find the best possible way to deal with it. So keep yourself updated with what is latest and what is safe to try. Keeping the family updated, again, I've mentioned here. So at the same time, learn to observe and handle emotions. I think that's important. So you may find, certain relatives of a patient very aggressive, or, who are likely to become aggressive when you announce death or some serious outcome. So be aware of that. Let your staff also keep an eye of the attendants who are, aggressive. It's helpful to identify the primary caretaker, and it's good to interact with that person on a regular basis, because that will help you build rapport, and also that person will have trust in you that you have been, informing and updating them. At this moment, when you're announcing it, there is likelihood of an outburst of emotion. So you have to handle their emotions and also keep your emotions in control. So avoid that, emotional reaction to a situation. They may even blame you for a minute. The thing is that they are actually unhappy with the situation and they want to blame somebody, and the hospital and the hospital staff and the doctors are the primary target of that blame. So I don't think we need to take it personally. We can just ignore it and understand that that's an emotional reaction to the situation. And at the end, they will realize whatever best could be done has been done. So these are the different ways that you can avoid any kind of aggressive reactions in your work situation, especially when you break any bad news. I think very important thing that we have to keep in mind is document all communication. So whatever you communicate with the family and the patient, please document it simultaneously. Communicate what you document and document what you communicate, because that's the way to make sure that everything goes on record. Tomorrow it might be required for any kind of legal or for any research purpose or for other various reasons. So document all the communications that you make with the patient and their family members. Once you break the bad news, the patient or the family will be very anxious and they may feel lost, especially when you say that the patient needs to be shifted to ICU or needs to be moved to another hospital. So they will feel that, okay, now you're disowning us, or you are kind of going to abandon us. So we have to assure them that we are not going to leave you or abandon you. Establish a plan. Let them know what you intend to do, what needs to be done, where you're going to move the patient, where the patient will be ultimately referred to. So arrange for the referral. Give them the details where you are referring. In case if there are any current symptoms to be treated, attend to them. Discuss the treatment plan. They may have some questions to ask you. Family members, they may have a question to ask you. Answer those questions and address their concerns. Then give the contact details where you are referring. Again, now, for example, you are going to refer the patient from your setup to another setup. So there you need to connect them with the person who is going to be attending to them or looking after the patient. So if possible, if you could give the contact details of the person or the team or the department, that will give them some idea where they need to go and communicate further. At this stage, if we could involve people, although I know again it might sound a little theoretical to you, but if you could see if somebody could counsel the patient's family, talk to the patient if possible, provide them some emotional support. I think we need whatever help possible should be provided to make sure that their emotional and psychological health is looked after. This is by one of the anonymous patients who said that they did everything for me, but nobody communicated with me. No one communicated with me. So I think it's important to understand that we do everything for the patient, but we need to communicate with them. We need to talk to them. It's not that time consuming. It is not that hard. It is not less important. But sometimes even if you do little less, but you communicate and talk, it compensates for the deficiency. On the other side, when we do everything and we do not communicate, the assumptions they have, the false, information that they have, that becomes truth for them, and that goes against us. I think this is in a nutshell that I had to share with all of you about communication.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Neja. While the participants post their questions in the Q&A box, just a question from my side. We all know that it's a very difficult time for everyone, like the healthcare providers, the patient, and the family members. So when the healthcare provider, it's like they are really into dealing with the heavy caseload. There has been a lot of even on it was on the news, there was lack of infrastructure facility. Even if they wanted to support the patient, they are not able to do that. So there's a lot of frustration among them also. So in that when they are in that situation, so it becomes really difficult. They are quite kind of arranging for things one after the another. So they sometimes, it's not intentional, but they do miss out this communication. So and the patient is definitely looking for somebody to tell him what's happening to him, somebody to tell the family members what's happening inside the hospital. So that link somewhere breaks because of the external factors. So how do we deal with that? How does that, where does the, because it's a very difficult situation for the healthcare providers. So how do they keep themselves calm? How do they go and
So,
visit? Maybe it's not possible for all patients, but sometimes in a day.
yeah, yeah. I think somebody's mic is on. If you could please mute your device, that will
Yeah,
be nice.
it's
Thank
from
you.
my side.
Yeah. So yeah. So there, it's a good question. I think, Deepaji, what you have asked about the problem of lack of infrastructure, lack of facilities. I fully understand and agree with what you are saying, and I know we have seen it, especially in the last 1 month. I think oxygen cylinders, oxygen concentrator. I mean, this was something that was always on the. I fully understand. See, communication does not mean that I have to always sit and talk with the patient. 93% of the communication is non-verbal. When I look at the patient and I smile or I talk or I just ask, how are you? It does not take much time. As I remember that I need to give injection or medicine to my patient, if I remember, I have to talk to my patient. And it's not just in COVID time. I have been into communication training for almost like 10 years. So from a lot of patients, I get to hear this. When things are normal, things are okay. I mean, I remember I was interacting with a very senior professor of a university. He said I was admitted in the ICU for almost like 1 week. Everybody came, examined, wrote medicines, gave me injections, medicines. Nobody talked to me. So it's not about just this pandemic time that we are not talking. I think in general, our communication with the patient is very limited. We do not interact. So if I have this as a priority on my mind, then interaction is important. Patient is a human being. Communication is one of the basic needs, socialization need. So I'm not asking you to sit and chit chat with the patient, but in between, and there are a lot of members, anybody, I'm not saying it's the doctor's responsibility to go and talk. But if that's on my priority, doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals, if anybody could go and engage in some way, even when we enter the room, we check the monitor, we make the notings, and we come back. Asking, how are you? कैसा लग रहा है? ठीक है? पहले से कुछ better है? अभी fever तो नहीं है? I mean, I don't think all these interactions require any extra additional time. But that has to be on the mind. We sometimes even don't make eye contact. Forget about smiling. We don't even make eye contact. When patients ask something, our usual answer is, अच्छा बताते हैं, अभी देखते हैं. These are the answers. वो अभी कब आएगा? अभी बताते हैं, वो कौन बताएगा? I mean, that's my, I'm not complaining. Please, everybody, don't take this as a complaint. I'm just trying to, share what patients feel. If we could incorporate this, I think the whole quality of interaction will change completely.
Definitely, I totally agree. There is a discussion, sentence on the chat box. Dr. Geeta Kumari, she wants to know in detail the different components of empathy. When we empathize, what needs to be considered? So, please reiterate on that.
Again, yeah, I read it in this. So, see, we all experience different emotions when we see a situation. I'll give you an example. For example, there's a patient who has come. So it's not just about a COVID situation. I'm talking in general. So there's a patient who comes and who is in pain, and I'm on duty. Say for example, I'm in emergency department, and the patient comes in and I'm busy doing something. So I ask the patient to sit down. I'm busy doing what I am doing. Maybe it's very important. It's something that I'm looking after. It's very important. But I make the patient wait for 4-5 minutes. The patient attendant comes and says me, कि डॉक्टर साहब एक बारी देख लीजिए. And I say अभी देखते हैं. अभी देखते हैं. So that means I'm not sensitive to the patient's pain. This is not being sensitive. Second is attendant becomes aggressive. That's apathy. The first one is apathy, when I'm not sensitive to the patient's pain. Now the patient's attendant becomes aggressive with me, and I'm equally angry because I'm tired and I'm exhausted and I'm occupied. And I, in the heart of my heart, I say, I will not attend you for another 5 minutes. This is antipathy. Now, for example, a lady comes with a child. The child is crying. The mother is also crying. Seeing them both cry, I start crying. This is sympathy. So all these three emotions are not required. Empathy is I'm able to see things from their point of view. Had it been my father who was in ICU and I was outside the ICU, how would have I felt? What would have I expected? What communication I would have desired? If I can see this, then I would know how I need to attend my patient's family member. So empathy is a mindful process. It's a cognitive process. It's very empowering. It creates patient and professional satisfaction. And I think that actually prevents physician burnout. If you start practicing empathy, you'll feel very light and joyful, because when you are able to see things from others' point of view, you are able to reciprocate. You would be proactive in meeting their requirement and their need. Automatically, they'll be thankful to what you are doing to
them. So there's no question. I'm just reiterating in the discussion that you said that the patient is already in a vulnerable situation, can't make decisions for himself. He is there on not the mercy, but under the treatment of a doctor, nurses, healthcare professionals. So, what can be done to make it a culture, in a culture that all the staff, because there will be times that one or the another might be busy. So and the patient is listening, that's what you said, that he is not unconscious, he or she, they are listening to what's happening around, how they are between themselves, having the conversation, what they are talking about the patient. So that definitely will either put him into more fragile situation, or maybe give him a kind of a hope on how he is taken care of. So how do we inculcate that culture in the setup, in entire setup? Because I have seen, like, there are doctors who are very good at their work, they are providing the best of the care, but they sometimes miss to even say a hello. They come, sit, and they do all the treatment very nicely, but when the patient comes back, it's like the one thing that's missing from the patient's angle is definitely the gesture, the greetings that sometimes miss, or maybe a simple introduction. So that it's kind of very rarely happens. So how do we inculcate
You're
that
very
culture?
right. Actually, when I talk about communication in healthcare, this is what I say, that incidentally, this is never given a priority. This is taken for granted that we all know and we all are practicing. Whereas in reality, and it's not just in our country, even across the world, this is a issue of concern where we do not, for example, basic courtesies like greeting the patient or smiling or, offering to sit is not practiced in a very right way. One of the reason is because it is not part of the training. It is not part of the education. So recently, MCI in 2019, they revised the curriculum, and in that they have incorporated this as a EdCom module. Now the medical students who are in year 1 and year 2, they are undergoing this program where attitude, ethics, and communication is part and parcel of their medical education. So I hope in maybe 5 or 10 years down the line, we will have doctors who have been trained in this, because this is a skill that needs to be acquired. Not everybody is born with these kind of skills. So these are professional skills, and these are not niceties. These are all essential skills to interact with the patient or with the family. For example, I said breaking bad news. There's a proper protocol. There are mock exercises. There are ways to learn through role plays and hands-on training, where we learn how do you go about breaking bad news. How do you handle aggressive patient party? How do you handle patient when patient family wants to take the patient lama or any other situation? So, but all that has to be made part and parcel of the training. Till now, we do not have, this as a regular training program. But I hope in the time to come, this will become now part and parcel of their training, and they'll be trained also in this. But as of now, I think collectively we all have to understand what we expect when we go as a patient to a hospital. If we can recollect this, I think it's just a realization that we all need to make, that we are having doing good work, but unless we communicate, we will not be able to translate that in reality. So there has to be a culture, has to be built. There has to be a commitment from the senior leaders. Then regular trainings have to be made in the hospitals, where the hospital staff is trained about these protocols and they learn how to go about communicating.
Yeah, just that brings me back to some other, not during the COVID, but during some field visit. It was on related to maternal health care. So I was talking to some women there, and they were saying, because I go to the government facility, or everything is provided to me, is free, so I don't have the right to ask question. So it's also sometimes in the mindset of the patient that maybe I am not equipped enough with information, not just fear, but with maybe I don't know about this, so they fear to ask questions. So I have seen, like, information is given from healthcare side, but from the patient side, there is sometimes a fear. Sometimes they don't understand the thing. You have mentioned about the simple languages, like honestly speaking, all the technical terms I also don't understand. So when I go, I expect some clear instructions, like that will calm me down, also give me an understanding what I have to do next, and not using the technical terms. So how important do you think that is, for just keeping in view the patient from everywhere, like the remotest place in India, because there the communication really needs to be from the local context, so that they understand it well. So how does that
we have a very large spectrum on this front. On one side, as you said, the patient feels that, oh, I am going to a government hospital, so I'm getting everything free, so I don't have right to ask questions. On the other side, we have patients who are very well informed, who Google search and know about their illness, and they also have this feeling that even if it's a government hospital, the salary that you're being paid is from my tax. So that's a huge spectrum that we have. I think that's a changing society that is bringing in these changes. So in any case, I think whether a government setup or a private setup, need to communicate is not less or more. And there has to be a proactive communication from our side, because a lot of medical errors happen because of this communication failure. For example, when you don't explain about the medication part properly, patients would either not take medicine, or may take overdose or underdose, or may stop taking medicine, or may repeat medicine without knowing whether I can continue or take this medicine or not, because not enough has been explained in terms of the medication safety. So patient safety has become a primary focus now. So proactive communication from our side is required. And if we fail to do that, we are liable for punishment and legal action. So we need to really be more, proactive in our communication. But in rural areas, as you're saying, if the patient does not ask a question, then chances of him getting or her getting information is very less, because if there is no need, there is no supply. So again, I think there, as being responsible, the doctor or the nurse on duty should provide proactive information, what is required for patient safety and continuity of medicine, treatment. That's required.
Yeah, I definitely agree to it, because it's kind of a responsibility from both the side. The patient or the family, they also need to ask question, and if that question doesn't come up, so the healthcare providers, as you said, has to be proactive enough to give them the updates, what's happening, how they should be ready for the next situation that might come, and what is the current situation, is it getting better or is it getting worse, so what should be the steps that they should be taking up. So definitely that is a responsibility, I would say, from both the sides. and communication doesn't stop there.
And
Very
there are
well.
certain patients' rights. We cannot deny those rights. In our country, I mean, patients are not aware of those rights, and we are not really in any trouble for the patient's rights. But if you will look at your way of practice, and if that's not up to the mark, and if the patient's rights are compromised, there's always a possibility of a legal action against us.
Yeah, and now people are also talking about the respectful care that they can't be denied of what their entitlements are. So
Yeah,
that
yeah.
has to be like,
Again, that's a patient's right, what you're saying.
yeah,
And especially in maternal health, I think we get to hear a lot, and I've seen it personally that at times the staff and the doctors on duty are very rude with the patient. And mother is in pain, and over and above that, we are hitting her and abusing her for. So I mean, things are changing. Patients can put us in trouble tomorrow.
so just like any concluding remarks from your side, because like we are coming towards the end of the session. And
Sure. So I think uh, I know times are very, very tough. I'm not underestimating the challenges that you all are facing and we all are facing. But I think communication is an important integral part. And if you will communicate, even you will feel relaxed and better. Not that it's just the patient who needs communication. If you'll communicate with the patient, your family member, definitely the family will be thankful to you for to have communicated and explained them and involved them, or at least clarified their doubts. And because it's a very critical time. It's a very critical time. Make sure that you speak to the patients and their family members as and when possible. Make sure that you interact with them.
thank you, Dr. Aneja. Definitely, I do agree. Like the way a patient is treated and given care, also including the gestures, that makes him come back to the healthcare provider again. This was really very helpful and very informative, and just keeping the conversation on, like in this situation, how do we communicate our needs, what are our expectations, also what are the concerns of the family, along with how what are the health risk danger from the provider's side. It becomes very important because it's a situation of uncertainty, sometimes fear. There is a lot of grief already in many families that has happened. So what keeps us really positive and hopeful is the timely communication, like it should be definitely timely
Yeah.
communication, and at a continuous one from both the sides.
Yeah.
So on that note, I think we are towards the end of the session. Really thank you a lot from our side, and I would also like to thank our supporting agency, SBI Foundation, who helped us to organize the series on COVID and keeping the conversation on various topics. So next, for the participants, there is a link that we have given on the chat box. So please give us your feedback and kindly fill in that link so that we know how to improve better with the coming sessions also. And if we can put up the flyer for the next session up. So our next session of the COVID-19 series is scheduled on June 8, Tuesday at 6 p.m. It will be moderated by Dr. Sanjay Kalra. Along with him, we'll be having two eminent speakers, Dr. Shilpa Joshi and Dr. Jatin Ahuja. And the topics will be nutrition and COVID-19 prevention, rational investigations in COVID-19. Don't forget to register yourself for the upcoming sessions. Thank you for your participation and have a wonderful evening to everyone. Stay safe. Thank you, Dr. Aneja, once again. Thank you a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.